Hello friends, it's me, Mary, from A Girl, a Book, and a Mom. And today, I'm going to, in a somewhat timely manner here, tell you about the only five books I read in October. So, stick around. Okay, so I only read 5 books this month, but they were chunky. Okay, they were huge. The first book I read is this 600-pound beast here. 600 page is this. Pretty sure it's 600 pages. It feels like it's 600 pounds, but it's not. 617 page long plain Bad Heroines. And I have to admit, I picked this one up not knowing anything at all about it. Nothing. I was walking through the library and I'm lucky enough to be part of the CleveNet system. So there's all these libraries in Ohio that are part of the Cleveland Public Library. And so yay, so I'm not bound to just one library. And I went in and I was looking for, I believe, travel books about Spain. No. I went in and I was looking for some other books on the list that I had that I knew I wanted to read. And I found this one just walking by it and I thought, oh my God, what a book. What a great, great title of a book. Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. And this delightful book was completely outside of anything I read. Like, it was dark academia, which, okay, I do enjoy dark academia. It has a sapphic love triangle, and yeah, I don't care. I'm heteronormative. No, that's not right. I'm cis, so nope. I'm straight, but you know, people can be people. So so yeah, and it was interesting. But yeah, so there was a LGBT sort of twist to it. And then it was a bit of a gothic horror book. And honestly, yeah, a little paranormal thrown in. Nothing like what I usually read. But although it was 617 pages, it was really interesting. And I found myself thinking about it when I wasn't reading it. So that was good. And it's got some delightful little illustrations, which is always fun. And it was an enjoyable read. It took a long time, and it's a weird premise to a story. It's basically a story about making a movie from a book about a girls' boarding school where there's a book that keeps showing up as people are dead. So, I know that was about as clear as mud, but yeah, for something that was so outside the realm of what I read normally, I found it enjoyable. I gave this a solid 4 stars. Yeah, it was a good way to pass, especially October, which is such a spooky month anyway. And that's kind of, yeah, I recommend it. So there you go. Okay, the next book I read, the second book, which especially after such a meaty tome as plain Bad Heroines. It was a nice, light and fluffy book. It was In the Hall with the Knife. And I'll post it up here. It's a young adult book. By... I didn't write down the author. I'm sorry. Today we have no authors written down. Sorry. So In the Hall with the Knife is a young adult book about some kids stuck at a fancy dormitory at a fancy high school in Maine, and it's based on Clue, the board game, or Cluedo, I think is what it's called somewhere else other than America. Like Europe? Australia? I'm not sure. I know it's called Cluedo somewhere else, but in America it's called Clue. And yes, the body is killed in the hall with the knife, and yeah, it's delightful. Easy read, young adult. Also not my thing. It was 3 stars. Because it was, fine, fluffy. There's a second book. I don't think I'm interested in reading it, but, the first one was okay to read. Okay. The next book is, and I apologize again, I don't have the author's name written down. I'll just post it down here somewhere. And of course we'll put the book here, is Other Words for Home. And oh my gosh, I love this book. It was a book in verse, which I've never actually read a book in verse. Mary is stepping outside her comfort zone this month. It's about a Syrian refugee who is a tween, I want to say. And she and her mother come to Cincinnati to live with her uncle and his family. And her brother is, she doesn't know where he is because he's fighting. And her dad is running a shop. And so she leaves everything she knows and comes to America. And it talks about her struggles and her worries about at home, and her mother is pregnant, and her worries, but then also just being a young girl learning how to find herself. It's really a tremendously good book. It was a very easy read. I believe it's middle grades. The girl doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to be encouraging her to read it. And it's free on Kindle Unlimited, which was nice. And yeah, it was wonderful. It was a wonderful book. Okay. There were so many wonderful books. Really so many wonderful books this month. That was 5 stars. The next book may be my new favorite book ever. It's called The Count of Monte Cristo by, I think it was Alexandre Dumas. I'll put his name down here because I didn't write it down. But I know that some of you might be thinking, 5 books in 1 month? What? What is going on? Do you not commute anymore? Yes, I commute. However, The Count of Monte Cristo, which I listened to on audiobook, was 47 hours long. And it got so that I would show up at school and the students in my Tuesday, Thursday class would be like, so what happened in the book? And I'd be like, well, turns out there was a baby. But the baby was dead. But then the baby was not dead. And it was just like that the whole way through, that it in a book of 47 hours long, And there's been a couple I've read last year, like Anna Karenina, Leo Tolstoy. He just goes off on tangents about agriculture and communism and workers' rights and blah, blah, blah. Don't care. Get to the story. Or Gone with the Wind, where she just blah, 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 not interested. At a couple places. A lot of places. And a lot of places it's like, dude, this is so not how slavery went. But I'll get more to Gone with the Wind in a minute. But that was also a 47-hour book. This 47-hour book was 47 hours of action. I was actually like, where can I drive that I can listen to this audiobook? And I know I can listen to an audiobook anytime. I could mow my lawn. The state of my lawn is a little frightening right now. But I picked up all the pine cones, so I should be able to mow tomorrow. Tangent. So, anyway, I know I could listen, except that kills the battery on my phone. And so I kind of have delegated the audiobooks just in the car. And this one was so amazing. The basic premise of how the story goes is there is this main character, Edmund Dantes. And Edmund is just a happy guy. He's just a happy guy. And he is going to, he's a sailor. He's on a boat. And the captain of the boat ups and dies. But in his last dying moments, he says to Edmund, he says, hey, needed to stop at Elba and hand this package there. Okay? And Edmund is like, okay, you're the captain and it's your dying wish, so okay. But little did he know that Danglars, which, okay, I kind of want to get the book so I know how that's spelled, because Danglars? No idea. Anyway, tangent again. So, Danglars, the customs officer, some other guy, sailor on the boat, sees him pass the letter package, not quite clear, off to Edmund. So anyway, captain dies. Edmund stops at Elba, gets a letter from Elba, comes back on the boat. He's the only guy who goes on. And then pulls in to Marseille. And yay, they got to Marseille. The ship owner is very happy. He says, hey, I want to make you captain of this boat. And Edmund goes, well, you know, I'd love to be captain, but first I want to go see my dad, because, you know, he's old and poor, and I got to make sure he's okay. And then second, I'm going to go marry Mercedes, who is the beautiful Catalan, who's kind of waiting for me. And then also, hey, I have this letter I have to take to Paris. And the owner of the boat's like, yeah, okay, whatever, sure, all right. So Edmund goes off. But then this Danglars guy is like, hey, we spent an extra day in Elba, and the owner of the boat goes, oh, okay, I'll check that out. So he talks to Edmund, and he's like, hey, so what's with the detour? And Edmund is like, oh, yeah, in his dying wish, he wanted me to take this thing to Elba, and they gave me the letter that I have to take to Paris. And the boat owner, who is apparently a Bonapartist, because that's important, is like, oh, hey, okay, no biggie, problem solved. That clears up the mystery. Yay. Okay? So that's the very beginning. Like, I mean, we aren't even an hour in. So then Edmund goes to see his dad, and his dad's like, yay, you're home. And the tailor next door, who I cannot remember his name, but he's like a reasonably bad guy, but they paid him the debts, and he's like, oh, okay, thank you, now we can be friends. So then Edmund goes to see Mercedes, and meanwhile, Mercedes has been hanging out with her cousin, Fernand, who is like, Fernand? Maybe it's Fernand. You know, audiobooks, you don't read the names. But, okay, so Mercedes has been hanging out with Fernand, and then Fernand is also in love with Mercedes, right? So Mercedes all along has been like, no, I love Edmund, not you, Fernand. So anyway, Edmund shows up. Mercedes is all like, oh, my betrothed. And Fernand sulks grumpily off to the cafe where, oh, hey, Danglars and the guy who I cannot remember his name are having a glass or two of wine and decide, you know, when this, well, so they're having a glass or two of wine, and like, honestly, this is in the first hour, and Danglars is like, wouldn't that be funny if somebody, you know, wrote a letter to the magistrate saying, this guy is a Bonapartist? And Fernand is like, well, it's not gonna work. And the other guy is like, oh, that's a bad idea. Let's just have some more wine. So, okay. Long story short. Long introduction, very short. The third guy drinks himself silly. Danglars writes a note in his left hand. Fernand mails the letter. So then we're at the wedding feast. Except it's not a wedding. They haven't had the wedding yet. They're getting married in like an hour. By now we might be in the second hour. Okay? So they're having the before the wedding feast. And they're like, yeah, we're going to go get married in like an hour. And everybody's happy and in love except for Fernand, who is like really getting drunk and angry. And the other guy who was at the meeting, and he's drunk. And all of a sudden, in walks a bunch of soldiers, and they take Edmond Dantes, and they, take him. In the meantime, the magistrate, Villefort, is also at his wedding feast, and they're like, excuse me, sir, you're needed. And so he goes to meet with Edmond Dantes, and he's very pleasant, and Edmund is pleasant, and then Edmund, who has not opened the letter, he's basically a mule. He hands over the letter to Villefort, and Villefort realizes this letter is to his dad. Now, Villefort is a royalist and is moving up in the ranks. He's kind of an ambitious social climber. So, having this Bonapartist letter to his dad, that's a bad thing. So he destroys the letter, Edmund thinking because Villefort is a good guy. But he is not a good guy. And Dantes is shipped off to prison, solitary confinement, because he kind of lost his temper and threatened a guard. And basically, this is in the first couple hours. And so then it becomes the whole point of Edmond Dantes' life is revenge. And I mean, there's just everything in this book. There is a suicide mission, a daring escape from prison. There's pirates. There's a baby that's a dead baby, but it's not dead. There's banditos. There's carnival. There's, oh, sweet, sweet revenge. And actual death, poisoning. It's just all in there. And it kind of reminds me of a very serious Princess Bride. Like, if you've ever seen the movie Princess Bride, where you're like, this is just nuts. It's like that. It's fantastic. And like I mentioned in those other books, there was like long periods of blah, 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 blah. None of that in this book. It was phenomenal. 5 stars. I would give it 10 if I could. 10 stars out of 5. Yeah, that was an amazing book. Amazing. So, if you know of any books that are similar, I'd like to read them. Okay. And then finally, the 5th book, and I own this one. The 5th book I read this month was The Sweetness of Water. And this is my woke book, but it also fulfills the buzzword readathon elements prompt, because earth, wind, fire, and water, huh? Anyway, this book was actually really, really good. Like, I had to stop for a minute because there's a scene where somebody witnesses something they aren't supposed to witness. And he's running, and he hears footsteps coming after him, and then it was time for me to go to bed, and then I was awake for half the night because I was worried about this character, which, yeah, turns out I should have been worried. But anyway, this is the story of 2 brothers who are freedmen. It's shortly after the Civil War. It might not even be like that the Civil War is completely over. But they're freed from a very nearby plantation. And they come across this guy, George, who is a landowner. And he's been selling off his property little by little so that he doesn't actually have to do anything. But upon hearing that his son is dead, he decides, okay, I want to do something. I want to make something. I want to do something. So he decides he wants to farm his land. And these 2 brothers, Prentice and Landry, these freedmen, he comes across them in the woods, and he's like, hey, can you help me? And they're like, yeah, no, not where you thought I was going with that, did ya? And then he has to go back and tell his wife, Isabel, that their son is dead. She doesn't take it well. But anyway, eventually, George convinces Prentice and Landry that they need to help him clear some land and plant some peanuts. And I mean, at first I was kind of like, oh, really? Okay. Out of the frying pan into the fire. But no, he's paying them what he would pay anybody else, which causes some problems in town. And he's asking their opinion and how are we supposed to do this? And so it's like really this bond happens between them. And then there's also this this romance going on between 2 Confederate soldiers. Told you, we're way outside the wheelhouse right now. But, which I'm sure happened a lot, that there were romances between soldiers. I think it wasn't shunned at that point. But anyway, so there's this romance going on, and in the discovery of it, there's some chaos. The town is mad at George. There's a murder. And what I like about this book a lot, other than the fact that, like I said, the characters are so wonderfully written that you cannot help but have empathy for all of the good guys and none of the bad guys. And it's one of those that it tells the story of people recovering from the Civil War in a much more accurate viewpoint than Gone with the Wind. Like, there is no coloring this pretty. The one thing though that they don't mention in here is the number of people who did not come back from the Civil War. But it's a gripping story. you worry about the characters. You're relieved when some of them actually turn out okay. It's a story of a strong, strong woman. It's a story of Black people just struggling to get through, and it's a story of hope. And I really, really enjoyed it. It's The Sweetness of Water by Nathan Harris. It's his debut novel. And yep, it's an Oprah Book Club pick. So, yeah, it's super, super good. Like, I totally recommend this one. This one is also 5 stars. So there you have it. My 5 books that I read in October. And I hope your reading is going well. What are you reading? What should I read? Because, you know, I'm always looking for new books. Anyway, hope you're doing well. Happy reading.